So before we get started, I just want to point out, I'm not saying Tulsi Gabbard is a fascist or has any sympathies with the alt-right. I do think she has problems with things like the fascist BJP and her support for that in India, but that's not what this video is specifically about. It's about why Nazis and why American fascists like David Duke and Richard Spencer particularly like Tulsi Gabbard and her brand of being anti-war and anti-interventionists. So a lot of my subscribers do like Tulsi Gabbard to some extent, and she gained a lot of prominence in the first place because she was a very outspoken critic of the American war machine. Now, I don't think being anti-war is the same in every regards, and I don't actually think Tulsi Gabbard herself is anti-war. I think she's anti-intervention. And you might ask, what is the difference between that? Well, take someone like Bernie Sanders. I think he is genuinely anti-war because he does not believe in conflict, he doesn't believe in violence. So it's part of a universal image where he's saying, you know, I want peace around the globe, and that's the main message of Bernie Sanders, peace and justice for all. Whereas Tulsi Gabbard, I think, is more about we need to stop wasting American lives and American money on stupid wars in multiple countries for either big business or our ties to countries like Saudi Arabia and Israel. Now, of course, the alt-right wouldn't like Bernie Sanders anyway because he's Jewish and he is more outspoken on his left-wing beliefs. But why does this message from Tulsi Gabbard appeal to the right wing more? Now, before I delve into that a bit deeper, let's read what people on the far right say about Tulsi Gabbard. So the Daily Beast did quite a good article that really just summed it up. So it says, search Tulsi Gabbard on majority right forums like 4chan's Politically Incorrect board, which I've had a horrible experience with, or the social network Gab. Unlike results for Democratic candidates like Elizabeth Warren, described as a communist, or Kamala Harris, described in racist terms, Gabbard has met a warmer reception. And then someone wrote, unironically listening to Tulsi Gabbard on Rogan podcast right now. I've cried 3 times so far because of how closely aligned her views are to mine. She is the Trump I hoped for, but apparently didn't deserve, one poll commentator wrote on Sunday. On Gab on Monday, users favourably circled an article about Gabbard's past anti-gay stances. These are anonymous commenters on a forum riddled by trolls, but other more prominent far-right figures have publicly spoken in Gabbard's defence. Steve Bannon, Trump's former White House chief strategist, reportedly admired Gabbard's foreign policy and arranged a meeting with her and Trump shortly after his election. Bannon was reportedly considering Gabbard for an administration role, although no such job ever materialised. He loves Tulsi Gabbard, loves her, a person close to Bannon told The Hill. Wants to work with her on everything. The person added that Gabbard would fit perfectly inside the administration. She gets the foreign policy stuff, the Islamic terrorism stuff. Richard Spencer, a white nationalist and alleged domestic abuser, has tweeted multiple times in support of Gabbard. David Duke, a former KKK leader and current racist, has also heaped praise on her. Tulsi Gabbard is brave and the kind of person we need in the diplomatic corps. Tulsi Gabbard 2020, he tweeted in 2017. In November 2016, Duke said that Gabbard was a representative of political realignment he hoped to see in the US and called for Donald Trump to appoint her Secretary of State. Duke ran a favourable blog post about Gabbard on his website. Gabbard hit back at Duke and saying, you didn't know I'm Polynesian. Dad couldn't use whites only water fountain. No thanks, your white nationalism is pure evil. So again, I never said she's on the alt-right. I don't think she's a fascist. She obviously doesn't want his support. Credited their Gabbard support to her stance in Syria, where civil war has resulted in an estimated 500,000 deaths. So you see the broad support she has by neo-Nazis, but let's get to the point on foreign policy. Here's an interesting article. So New York Post, Representative Tulsi Gabbard gets 2020 endorsement from David Duke, and then it goes to say, Democratic presidential hopeful Representative Tulsi Gabbard has apparently gotten an endorsement from David Duke, the 68-year-old white supremacist and former GOP state senator, has wrote Tulsi Gabbard for president, finally a candidate who will put America first, rather than Israel first. So this is important. This is the whole point of my video. Tulsi Gabbard is currently the only presidential candidate who doesn't want to send the white children off to die for Israel, the former Grand Wizard of the Klan tweeted. And that thing that Duke raises is really at the heart of Nazis' support for Tulsi Gabbard and Nazi support for anti-interventionism. So because of the way Tulsi Gabbard ties all these things to economic interests, they think she's talking about the Jews. They think because it's big business, it's big military, and they're doing these things for economic reasons in people like Tulsi Gabbard's mind. What the Nazis do is take it one step further and say, yeah, they're doing it for economic reasons, they're doing it for the Jews in America, and they're also doing it because Israel are making them do it. So we are anti-war, not because as fascists we are anti-violence, because it's clear fascists aren't anti-violence, and they aren't technically anti-war. They are anti-American intervention just because of the business interests involved, and of course the alignment with Israel on American policy in the Middle East. So in traditional fascist beliefs, they think the Jews are pulling the strings on everything and they're controlling the world. Quite so disturbing when Donald Trump, who has a religiously Jewish daughter and a Jewish son-in-law, keeps talking about this term globalist, which essentially is just a dog whistle for a Jew that wants to control the world, and that's what the Nazis use it for. That's why it's a globalist versus, I guess, America First types, because the globalists are working for Israel and they're working for Jewish business, whereas the people who are America First, like they think Tulsi Gabbard is, they're against Israeli influence and they're against Jewish influence. They do not want to do the work of these groups. They're standing up to them, and that's why they find her message attractive. And that is also what I have personally criticised her for in the past. I don't think it's a bad message at all, but what is disturbing about Tulsi Gabbard's message in particular is that it's not anti-war, and a lot of the time it's not even anti-fascist. I think one of the biggest problems I have with her is her support for the BJP. Now, the BJP is of course linked to the RSS, its military wing, which was actually inspired by the Waffen-SS, and that is what it's modelled on. It's a fanatical Hindu nationalist paramilitary, and the BJP is its political party. And you see what's going on in India today, and how fascism is rising there. And that's the problem with Tulsi Gabbard, and that's why I never really liked her as a candidate after these ties were really exposed to me. So that's why I think fascists can attach themselves to her, because in their mind, it's just another step for her to say, I'm anti-war, I'm pro-American, let's bring our American soldiers home, let's stop doing the work of other countries, let's stop doing the work of big business in the US, and then the Nazis, all they have to say is, yeah, but it's the Jews controlling all of that. It's like that video I made about why I think Jordan Peterson is particularly bad for parroting fascist propaganda, because Jordan Peterson is so rabidly anti-left. He started spreading Nazi propaganda about cultural Marxism. Now, Jordan Peterson focused on Marxists infiltrating academia because they lost the Cold War. But because that way of thinking has a tradition in Nazi propaganda, why a lot of Nazis like him is because they just take that one step further and say, Jordan Peterson is 100% right, but in traditional fascist fashion, we just say that the Jews are controlling the Marxists, because as we all know through history, a big reason for the rise of the Nazis is because a lot of white Russians and imperialist Russians came to the West and came to Western Europe and said, look what the Jews have done to our country. The Jews have rose up and they control this Bolshevik movement, and they're behind every Bolshevik movement in the world. So the Jews, communists, pretty much the same. The Jews are controlling all these revolutions for their own end, and that's what they do. Jordan Peterson, they're like, you say Marxist, that's perfectly fine, and then I just take your supporters, I take their way of thinking and be like, yeah, but look, it's the Marxists, but they're doing the work of the Jews. So I think people have to be extra careful sometimes when they're making these arguments. Of course you can have these points of view, even though I don't necessarily agree with them completely, but I think people sometimes need to realise how closely they might align to fascist arguments, and how you could only need to take it a one step further to just go over to their side. But the problem is, even though you might personally not be a fascist and you will never believe that, it helps people get into the pipeline and then start believing that. So while Tulsi Gabbard's anti-interventionist stance is admirable, because she's not anti-war and because she criticises it in a certain way, it leaves it open for fascists to be like, well, she's one of us. She is criticising things in the exact same way. The same thing with Jordan Peterson. And these people aren't Nazis, but this is how the Nazis use them to get more recruits, to get more followers, to get them through the pipeline where people slowly start becoming more and more extreme, and the ideas you present to them become, I guess, more easy to digest if they've gone through, what people like Gabbard and Peterson put forward. So again, Nazis in America, fascists in America, they don't support Donald Trump because he's anti-war. They don't support Donald Trump because he's anti-violence. They supported Donald Trump because he said he would not do the dirty work, I guess, in terms of military interventions of big business. He wouldn't just fight wars for no reason. And obviously they put their own beliefs into that. So they said Donald Trump obviously means he's not going to do the work of Israel and Jewish business interests anymore. And that's why they like Donald Trump's stance on foreign policy. Not because they care about human life, not because they're against military conflict, not because they are against violence, because they see America's foreign policy as being dictated by the Jews who are seeking to control the world, essentially. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Please like and subscribe if you like the video. Follow me on social media at The Cavernacle. Twitter is the main one, but I also have Facebook and Instagram. Reddit is another big one, so my subreddit is r/The Cavernacle. Subscribe to that one to keep up with everything I'm doing. Also, u/Tommy Cahill is my personal Reddit account. If you want to check out my Patreon and WordPress, those are in the description. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.